Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Devin Hassan and Kendrick Johnson. Gentlemen, let's keep rolling with our spring football roundup series as we go district by district, letting y'all know kind of where things stand for our high school football teams at this juncture of the offseason. Last week we led off talking some 5A with 7-5A Division II. We're going to stick with 5A for this episode and stick with 7-5A, albeit over in Division I. That's not confusing, is it? So as a quick refresher of what that district consists of, because as we mentioned last week, with football, those districts are a bit different from the other sports. This is the district that has McKinney North, the two 5A Mesquite ISD schools, so Poteet and West Mesquite, as well as Tyler, John Tyler, Sherman, Texas High out in Texarkana, and Wiley East. For those last four schools, we'll get to them at a later junction. Going to focus primarily on the three that are near and dear to our hearts: McKinney North, Poteet, and West Mesquite. This was a
fascinating district.
This was a wild district last year.
Wild West. Me and Devin talk about all the time. You didn't ever know what you're going to see, and you wouldn't think in high school sports that travel plays a big deal, but each team has to make at least one, sometimes two to 3 hour bus rides, and that adds up because you see the results of those games. It was wild. Like Sherman's only an hour and a half away from McKinney on the bus, and that was McKinney's worst game. They got beat by 40.
Do we recall, was there anyone last year that had to make the trips to both Tyler and Texarkana?
McKinney did. I know they went to John Tyler, but Texarkana came to McKinney.
Wasn't sure if the schedule.
No, I don't believe so. But again, Wiley East might have been one of those. It's the teams that we don't pay as close of attention to. And I'm not as big of a proponent as Kendrick is on the travel makes a difference. It's just, to me, you go out east. I think it's tough to play at Rose Stadium in Tyler. I think it's tough, to go to Lobo Stadium in Longview and play. But I don't think it's that as big of a deal going to Sherman or.
The coaches told me in the program I cover North that it's basically like routine. Like you got kids that are used to being in class, coaches even have the routine, so that throws off the routine because you gotta make account for that travel. And just traveling on a day of a big game is a big deal. So it's more about that than the actual sitting on the bus and hanging out, because nobody really hangs out in Yellow Dogs in 2019.
Because that travel dynamic isn't going anywhere. It's the same district layout this year. It's reversed though. So if you had John Tyler come to you this year, you're going to Tyler this coming season, and same with Texarkana. So, but as far as those three specific teams, North, Poteet, and West Mesquite, as far as specific offseason storylines, Devin, I know with Poteet last during the offseason, we've got a new coach in the ranks there at Poteet. So just talk a bit about that, the promotion, I guess, within for the Pirates and how their offseason is shaped up thus far.
Yeah, Rod McLean takes over for Cody Groves. Cody Groves was promoted to athletic director. So congratulations, Coach Groves. And this is exactly what Poteet did the last time that they had a coaching change back in 2013 when Randy Jackson left. Cody Groves was the defensive coordinator then. They promoted within and made a seamless transition in terms of wins and losses, success-wise. They did the same thing this time. Rodney McLean's been there for 4 years as the defensive coordinator and the strength coach, which, excuse me, he pointed out to me, when I talked to him this spring, that the fact that he's the strength coach also is a big thing for him because, sometimes you think, well, defensive coordinator, he's going to know the defensive guys, but does he really know the offensive guys? Well, as strength conditioning coach, he knows he's been working with all these players. So him taking over the head coaching job, he's got a good grasp of both sides of the ball. There's no reason to think, Poteet's a team that's made the playoffs 8 of the last 9 years. More often than not, they've been able to make runs. Last year was kind of a tough, they're kind of snake bit last year. They lost 41-38 in the first round against College Station in a back-and-forth game that's coming 2 weeks on the heels of their showdown for the district title where they lost 48-44 to John Tyler on the last-second Hail Mary as time expires. But they're in good shape to make another run at it. just kind of looking over, obviously not getting too much in depth on the other teams. There's a lot of seniors on that all-district team for programs like John Tyler. Whereas Poteet, while they certainly graduated their share of standouts, they have a lot coming back too. Obviously, Seth McGowan, the district most valuable player from last year, their outstanding running back, rushed for more than 1,600 yards and 25 touchdowns, and he's just a workhorse. I mean, he's a guy that can really be the difference maker. Going through there, having to break it any quarterback, but Jalon Police, who impressed me on the basketball court, good athlete and whatnot, didn't play at all on varsity last year, but he kind of is looking to step into that role. Tristan Golightly gives him a seasoned option on the outside. I think the offensive line is supposed to be in good shape with Jackson Huber, Matthew Martinez, Jaden Donahoe's an outstanding sophomore who actually played varsity as a freshman, which on the offensive line is kind of a rarity because they don't have usually that varsity, I guess, stature to step in on the line. But he's going to be a good one. Defensively, the same thing. District Player of the Year, Jalen Hodo in the secondary had 92 tackles, 3 defensive touchdowns. He'll be back to anchor that secondary. The linebacker unit is going to be really good with Jonathan Caff, Jalen Updike, Nicholas DeVille. So, Poteet has, they're armed and ready to make another run at that district title that eluded them on the Hail Mary last year.
It is crazy to think just how, what a swing game that was in terms of, because you look at how that affected, the playoff picture, so to speak. Now, John Tyler, the only team in that district that wound up even winning so much as a playoff game, they go 4 rounds deep. You just think if those roles were reversed, if Poteet gets that top seed, how different things could have been.
Oh yeah, because I think I was at that game, and that was 2 even teams. That was 2 heavyweight teams in terms of 5A Division I. These were, you kind of knew that both these teams had the potential to make a run. Once the playoffs rolled around, and again, they drew the tougher assignment. College Station came to that game as the reigning state champions.
Oh yeah.
And Poteet, much like the John Tyler game, they had their chances. They led late, and they just let it get away from them. It was one of those really tough seasons when you let it get a couple of those big games slip away in the final seconds on both accounts.
Nevertheless, sounds like Poteet is locked and loaded and ready for another run of the pretty consistently strong season, which has just been par for the course for that.
Yeah, they'll be ready to go. Obviously, John Tyler is always going to be John Tyler, and they're always going to have a tremendous amount of athletes. But yeah, Poteet's going to be right there in the running yet again. Can
we say the same for McKinney North, Kendrick? What's the read on the Bulldogs right now?
They definitely expect to be in the playoffs, and those teams that he talked about, they had a game. They against Poteet. They're going for a drive to either go for the win or tie the game up, and the corner, he made a great play. Just he said he guessed because they had been running a certain route, and he basically guessed, and he picked off Dylan Markowitz and did a Dion, and basically it says it was 53-39, but that play right there, because if he missed, they would have scored. It would have been overtime. Anything would have happened. So that was a swing, and then they went up to John Tyler, and they couldn't punch it in the last second and got beat 28-25. And then they rolled in the Lufkin, playing number 1 team in the state. So they ended with 3 losses, but those losses were way closer than what they looked. They get to play either game against Poteet or Tyler, and their seed would have went up. They got 4th. But the main thing for McKinney North, defense. They're trying to change the mentality, because when you think about, you've been covering this area a little bit longer than me, since I've been in and out and moved places. When you hear about McKinney North football, what do you think about?
Oh yeah, they're Texas Tech.
Shout out to Coach Kyle Harden. He's been the offensive coordinator for the last few years. I know in the 3 years I covered them, they put up 40 more points a game, and they've had 3 different cast of characters. It's not been the same people, and he finds a way to get it done. But this offseason, they were pleasantly surprised, especially in the spring. Their defense is doing things that they didn't think. They're ahead of the schedule they were last year. But the main thing is, you look at the numbers, again, even against Wiley East, the game that they won 90-32, they gave up 32 points. They gave up 32 points or more against every opponent in district other than John Tyler. It was 28-25. They lost. So they got to get that number down. And the strength for them will be their linebackers. They got Carson Chris, a.k.a. I call him Sean Lee Jr. You look at the kid, he's like 5'9". Don't look that intimidating. He's very smart. He's always by the ball. Like Sean Lee. It's like, I don't know. It's like he knows stuff that we don't know. He's a guy that you have to watch him play. He's not going to jump off at you by looking at him, but you see him play. He's always around the ball. Coach Fetchy's son, Max Fetchy, very impressive player. He's gotten better physically. He makes plays. They losing a lot up front. Their defensive line is basically got decimated by graduation, but so they have all kinds of jobs. So Coach Villarreal is really high on Ethan Dennis, Keon Davis, and Yomon Evans. Doug can be in the rotation because they don't really know who's going to stand out of the crew. They have a guy named John Jones who's in an interesting predicament. Ooh. He basically came on late towards the end of last year, but there's rumors that he might go to McKinney. So somebody in MISD is going to get a nice defensive lineman. It's just rather is he going to stay here north or go to McKinney High. And then the secondary, they got Michael Morris and Devin Jones, who didn't really have big roles this year, but you can see that potential, and now they'll be locked and loaded in secondary. But defense is going to be the key from McKinney North. If their defense can improve, their results will improve because they're going to put up points. Mm-hmm. On offense, I don't want to throw out things. It was kind of like everybody knows about Brandon Frazier, one of the top tight ends in the state. He's going to be a key factor. Manny Fincher, a.k.a. Logic Jr., he looks like Logic the rapper. But last year in
you know that is, Devin?
Yeah, I'm running down.
That's what they call him. But the guy went from last year kind of like being he was in a timeshare with Hunter Shea, ended up getting 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, but he got better as the year got on. He's put on more weight, so I'm expecting big things out of him. And North always finds somebody that gets 1,500 yards. It's like so I think he'd be next in line to do that. He could have did last year had he not split carries.
And is Markowitz still in line to be the quarterback?
Markowitz should be the starting quarterback. And his brother, he has a twin brother, who they call him Big Hoss, Austin.
Everybody has a nickname on this team.
Big Hoss has gotten 4 offers from Tulsa and Texas State and a couple others, but he anchors that line down because North's line last year was kind of inexperienced. He's the anchor, so their offensive line, they're built up front. They got the running back, they got Big Frazier, they got J.J. Henry, and a complement of receivers and Sean Mansour on the receiving core. Mm-hmm. So the offense is locked and loaded as usual.
Because it's the first time now in a few years that they will enter with just one quarterback, because they've worked the committee with Constantine and Markowitz over the last few years. And you had the one that was the more mobile quarterback, the more dual threat. Markowitz is more of your traditional pocket passer. I wonder how that's going to impact just the overall philosophy of the offense, especially for a guy like Frazier, who maybe since he's playing since he has more of a pass-oriented quarterback, maybe he's looking at a bigger workload. Or
they're going to put him everywhere. He's going to be ace-back, going to be tight end. He's going to be in receiver. They're going to find a way to cause mismatches because when he just goes out, I've literally seen 2 people just shift and then they leave somebody wide open because number 5 or whatever.
It's the Steph Curry effect.
Like I said, Coach Kyle Hart does a great job of finding ways to get people the ball, so points would not be a problem for McKinney North. But everything is based around him, but they have other ways to beat you besides him, which makes them deadly because they can run the ball. And Markowitz, he's a very solid quarterback. He got a lot of experience last year. Like you said, he split time with Cam Constantine, but Cam got hurt and he didn't play the last 3 games. So he got those experiences against Poteet, against Sean Tyler in the playoff game. So he has that under his belt. So it's like he hasn't been a full-time starter, but he's got more experience than most people get going into their senior year that haven't started for the whole.
And he started, if you were just going to power rank the biggest games that they played last year, the playoff game and then John Tyler, Poteet, it's probably, those are three good opponents to get your feet wet against for sure. North finished last year as part of a 3-way tie for 3rd place with West Mesquite and Sherman. West Mesquite was unfortunately on the wrong end of that 3-way log jam, wound up missing the playoffs. So Devin, what is the read on the Wranglers right now? How are they feeling as far as their chances of bouncing back heading into this season?
A lot of new faces for West Mesquite this year. They had a lot of year in, year out, they produce athletic playmakers on defense. I mean, a lot of times they're undersized, but they're just athletic and they're able to make plays. And they're going to have some new guys stepping in, but they've been able to do that over the years. I mean, you look back since 2006, they've made the playoffs 11 out of 13 years, and even the 2 years they didn't make it, they were in contention. Just like last year, they obviously tied for 3rd and they lose it on the point differential. So we'll have to see how some of these new guys step up. They do have one of the better running backs in the state, really, that no one really talks about, in Ty Jordan. He's got offers from several D1 programs. A little undersized, but just quick.
Mm-hmm.
He rushed for 1,240 yards, 15 touchdowns last year. He's an excellent wide receiver. He was a little bit banged up. Like I say, he put those numbers up. He missed the McKinney North game. Again, they lost out there. And so he's going to be the focal point on offense, especially as they break in a new quarterback. When I was at their spring game, they worked a couple different guys in. They're missing the big target on the outside. Last year they had Dylan Wright. He signed with A&M.
Oh, yeah.
And
big kid.
Yeah, they don't.
6'6".
Yeah, he's an excellent athlete. I'm really curious to see how they use Jacoby Walton. He was, as a sophomore last year, he was the defensive newcomer of the year. He had 52 tackles, a couple of fumble recoveries, a couple forced fumbles, but he also played a little on offense. Carried the ball to the backfield. They lined up the outside. He had 10 catches, I believe. So, and one of the best returners in the region, averaging over 25 yards a kickoff and over 12 yards per punt. So, really curious how they're going to incorporate him. West Mesquite has not been averse to playing guys two ways in the past. There's a lot of guys that have done that basically played 90 to 95% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. And when you have, I guess, a dynamic athlete the way that Jacoby Walton appears to be, you're going to see him in the backfield. You may see him on the outside. You're going to see him in the secondary, on special teams. He may be one of those guys that never leaves the field. So, but he also proved last year he has game-changing abilities. So, really curious to see how they incorporate him into both sides. But again, West Mesquite's going to be in the mix. It's just going to be real interesting to see how they come out in August once that 2 deep finally starts to take shape.
It's still incredibly early, but is there any read on John Tyler? I know they won the district last year. Do we feel like the team to beat right now, or is it still not really a ton of what they're bringing to the table this year?
I think given what they lost, and given what Poteet returns, I think if you polled the coaches right now, they would say Poteet would probably be the early favorite. Just simply because, again, John Tyler is one of those programs that that reloads year in, year out. Yeah. But just going by the number of starters that they lost, especially key starters, a quarterback, running back, and et cetera. It's tougher to gauge them than it is a team like Poteet, where Seth McGowan's there, where that Jalen Hodo's there, mm-hmm. where they have proven commodities that are going to be able to go out there and produce.
Yeah, and Seth McGowan's supposed to be that guy.
Oh yeah, no, that kid's a horse. Just from the highlights that I've seen of him over the years, yeah, he's a force to be reckoned. Probably on the short list of district MVP candidates, I'd say right now for that district. And that is at least a cursory look, at least as far as our local programs go for District 7-5A Division II. I'm still going to talk a little 6A, and we'll talk some 6A. So Lewisville ISD and Coppell. We'll get Kendrick and Devin out of here, bring in Justin Thomas, and we will pick that up in just a moment. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. All right, we are back. We've got Justin Thomas in to talk some 6A, so some Lewisville ISD, some Coppell. You're the district that you cover so near and dear for all these years. So this was a district that last year probably had, I'd say, one of the more random, returns to prominence for a program. Yeah. I don't think Flower Mound was not on anybody's radar last year as far as being a potential district championship team.
Maybe as a playoff team, but I don't think anybody pegged them as a district champ. Certainly not going undefeated all the way to the district championship.
In a district that has programs like Coppell and Hebron, Marcus, just these perennial playoff juggernauts, and Flower Mound just out of nowhere. Yeah. So what are let's start with the Jaguars as they're embarking on their offseason and building towards their eventual district championship defense. What do we make so far of how Flower Mound's offseason is coming along, and just what are the odds that we can see a similar year out of the Jaguars?
Well, obviously, they're running pretty high. There's a lot of enthusiasm within the program coming off that big season last year, and plenty of reasons to be optimistic looking forward, especially when you look at the offense that was pretty high-powered last year. They're going to have to replace their entire offensive line. So
that's pretty significant.
That's the big question mark because they're pretty loaded at the skill position. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what they kind of developed over the spring and going into the fall up front, but at the skill positions, they're loaded. Blake Short was the offensive MVP. He's back at quarterback.
Yeah.
Pierce Hudgens probably could have made a case for him to be the offensive MVP as last year as well at running back. He's back off a monster season he had. They lose Jake Welch, but they still have 2 quality receivers coming back in Reed Touchdown and Reese Carter. So talented wide receivers. And, this offense, assuming the line can come around, I think they're going to be able to put up points. And don't forget, they also have a weapon in the kicking game there with Bert Auburn coming off an all-district season. He was just a sophomore last year, so they'll have him for 2 more years. So this is an offense that I think, as long as, the offensive line just doesn't completely fall apart, this is going to be a really prolific offense, I think. So that's going to be kind of what they're hanging their hat on. But they still have some talented players coming back on defense too, especially Travis McFarland is still an EB up front. So the front line, the front 7 should be pretty strong for Flower Mound too. So they're going to be pretty optimistic, pretty excited heading back into next season. And I think we can look for some more good things from the Jaguars, especially with what they've got offensively.
Because with the offensive line, it's not just that they graduated all 5 of their starters. All 5 of those kids made the all-district team too. So it's not like they're just replacing like some also-rans. Those are 5 really, really good linemen. So that is definitely top of mind as far as areas to address for Coach Basil and his staff.
I guess that's kind of a good way to transition to another team, Coppell, that has all-district center Garrison Wheatley back, but they lost 4 first-team all-district players on the offensive line.
They always have great offensive lines, so it feels like.
Pretty much a factory over there. So I'm not too concerned that they won't be able to replace that talent, but still, it's always going to be a learning process when you have 4 new starters on the line there. And Coppell is a team that really just got hit by graduation hard. Not only did they lose those offensive linemen, they lost 7 all-district defensive players as well. And then you look at some of the talent they lost, Ryan Hurt and D. Heath in the backfield, do it all. Jonathan McGill, Stanford signee, he was the MVP in the district last year, playing both ways, so they'll have to replace him. They do have Drew Cernelia back at quarterback, so that's a good kind of starting point. Another big guy they lost was receiver Rashid Noel, who also took some snaps at quarterback. So they have big shoes to fill kind of all over the place. They're going to get back a guy that might have been their most talented player last year, but he got injured early in the season, KJ Liggins. He missed the basketball season too, but he was out there at spring camp working out, so he's fully healthy, and he's a 2-way player that should really be able to help alleviate the loss of some of those skilled players at the playmaking positions there.
Because that was the first thing that I was looking at, was just like, what the heck are they going to do with the skill positions on offense? Because this was an offense that, relative to the normal Coppell standard, that offense took some lumps last year.
Yeah, definitely. They had trouble, especially moving the ball through the air, and it's kind of weird, a team that has 5 first-team all-district performers on the offensive line. They didn't have an all-district running back, so we'll see.
Which is weird because Hurt's Hurt was a quality back, at least the times that I've seen him play.
Just the depth of the running back position in that district, I guess, was tough to get a spot. But either way, they still have to replace him and D. Heath, who was their second running back. And like I said, I think their top 5 receivers all graduated. But so hopefully KJ Liggins, they might have to incorporate him offensively more than maybe they would have last year.
Yes, they graduated one half of the MVP ballot for District 6XA, and losing Jonathan McGill with as much as he was asked to do on both sides of the ball. That is how many positions did that kid ultimately play by the end of his high school career?
Running back, receiver, kick returner, punt returner, even took some reps at Wildcat at quarterback, in addition to playing in the secondary where he was a stud there, which is where he's going to play in college. I mentioned the 7 all-district players they lost. They also lose their defensive coordinator, Kirk McBride, who went with his dad, Joe, when he took the job at Boyd, the head coaching job at Boyd. So Justin Merchant will be the defensive coordinator under Coach DeWitt there at Coppell. But they do have a couple good players. Tim O'Hurd's back, and then, of course, you had Walker Polk, who was the newcomer of the year, just outstanding linebacker as a freshman last year. So look for big things for him over the next 3 years. So still some talent there, but big shoes to fill on both sides of the ball for the Cowboys.
The other half of the district MVP out of 6XA was Hebron's Trajan Bridges, another player who did just about everything that you could ask for out of a skill player. Heck, I remember the first game that I covered last season was Hebron against Plano.
Caught 3 touchdowns that game.
And that was also the game though that they were having to use their backup quarterback because Carson Harris began the year. He didn't play in that game. He was being held out of that game. for unknown reasons. But nevertheless, so yeah, like in the second half, there were parts where they just had to roll with Bridges as their quarterback. He was strictly in there as a wildcat runner and whatnot, and they were still able to hold off and defeat Plano in a large part because Plano just couldn't tackle him out of the backfield. I mean, you just got to see his versatility on display, and I mean, obviously it led to another great year for Hebron. So without him, though,
third round for I think the third time ever, I think.
So I mean, without him and just all that he was asked to do for that offense, really the linchpin of the Hawks and their identity last season. What do we make of what Hebron's offense is going to have now without Trajan Bridges?
Well, I think they're going to be still okay at wide receiver. They have Colton Bradford and Keon Wafer back, who were kind of the secondary receivers behind Bridges last year. They have a couple guys, Vincent Miller and Mason Williamson, who are going to be playing two ways, wide receiver and safety. And then they got a big transfer, Jedi Henry, a guy that you're kind of familiar with, coming over from John Paul II. So look for him to kind of step in and maybe help alleviate some of that loss from Bridges. The other thing you can do is you can always turn around and hand the ball off because they have a dynamic backfield. Jalen Lott was an all-district performer last year. Isaiah Broadway was co-newcomer of the year with Armani Winfield over at Lewisville, the receiver. Talking to Coach Brazel, he says you're going to see both of them in the backfield at times, maybe even Lott taking some reps at receiver this year to kind of fill into that Bridges playmaking role a little more. And then, you have Carson Harris coming back for his senior year. Obviously led them in the third round, and he's a true weapon with his legs as well, in addition to what he can do in the passing game. So, it's tough to lose a singular talent like Bridges, but still tons of talent on this Hebron offense. Another kind of sticking with the trend, I guess, is having to replace offensive linemen. They lost one of their stalwarts on the line, Blake Barber, but they do have all-district players, Joel Suarez and Miles James, back as well, with Trent McCown, even though he didn't play spring football because he was still playing with Hebron's baseball team. But 3 starters back on the offensive line, so that should be a pretty good foundation to work with there. And I think this offense is going to I think they'll still be able to move the ball pretty well.
Can make a case that right now that is the best backfield in the district between Lott and Broadway.
Probably one of the best backfields in the whole area. Yeah. I mean, Broadway's a guy that was getting Division I offers before he even took a snap as a freshman. I think Baylor offered him before the season even started. So, but him and Lott, Broadway's more the physical guy. Lott's more of the game breaker, speed guy. So I think still going to be a lot of talent on that Hebron offense there.
If there was a school in the district that at this time last year we would have laid claim to having the best backfield in the district, it would have been Marcus. How's that for a transition?
Yeah.
And with Marcus, and we know it's been the case for the last 3 years or whatever. Yeah. It was the Justin Dinka show. Yep. One of the best running backs in the area, the state, what have you. I mean, everything just revolved around Justin Dinka.
Yeah.
So
defenses knew that too.
Yes. Yes, they did. So so obviously with him, having graduated, and then he's on to what now? San Diego State.
San Diego State. Yep.
What does life after Dinka look like for the Marauders?
I don't know, because they lose Dinka, but they also lose their playmaker at wide receiver, Marcel Brooks, who is just awesome in terms of big playability. Going
impressive two-way contributor for Marcus.
Going on to LSU. Fortunately, they have Garrett Nussmauer back for his junior year. He kind of transferred in last year, took over as quarterback as a sophomore, and so Coach Atkinson said he had a very nice camp, so they're looking for big things from him as he moves into his years as an upperclassman. And then replacing Dinka, you're going to have Tyson Edwards, who actually showed a lot of flashes last year. He averaged 7.2 yards per carry, had 4 touchdowns, so he looks like he's going to be capable. I mean, tough to replace a D1 guy like Dinka, but looks like Tyson Edwards is going to be able to help alleviate that loss with the running game there. And then they should be pretty solid at wide receiver. You have Jaden Robinson and Christian Espinoza back. You have H-back Colin Sutherland back, and then a guy you got to see.
I'm fascinated by this guy.
Seeing some 7-on-7 action. They had a Kansas City move-in named J. Michael Sturdivant, and from what you say and from what Coach Atkinson said, he seems like he'll be a big playmaker for them at receiver.
That's the thing with Marcus, and it just shows you how much a coaching change can change the way you conduct your offseason. This has got to be the most 7-on-7 that Marcus has ever played. You never saw Marcus in the SQT circuit.
No, and they've already qualified.
Yeah, they've already qualified for state for the first time in like almost 15 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've played already in 2 SQTs, one in Hearst, one in Grapevine. They're playing again in Justin Northwest on Friday.
They keep playing in them until they get to state. So they're not going to do a league, but they'll keep playing in the tournaments and get ready for that state tournament coming up here.
That's the thing with 7-on-7, like, you can kind of tell, like, the players that are a bit of a cut above the rest of them, especially the receivers, they kind of stand out in 7-on-7. And granted, it's, you have to apply the obvious caveats. 7-on-7, you can only be so physical with the between the DBs and the receivers and whatnot. But Sturdivant has been one of the best players at both of the tournaments that I've seen, just from his ability to win 50-50 balls in the air. I mean, his ability to get separation on deep routes. I mean, I was just thinking, watching him, against Grapevine, against, I forget who it was, that he was just tearing up some helpless secondary. But like, I was thinking, like, I mean, Caden Smith was a tight end. I can't think of the last time though that Marcus had a potentially dominant wide receiver like this. It feels like quite some time. But this moving in there is J. Michael Sturdivant. Yeah, keep an eye on him. Marcus, they got themselves a pretty significant weapon. If what we're seeing right now carries over into the fall when they put the pads on.
Sticking with Marcus, another kind of theme of this district is you have a lot of moving in the coaching ranks. No head coaching changes, but lots of new coordinators. Yeah. That's the case at Marcus too. Scott Wells will come in from Sunnyvale to take over as defensive coordinator, and he's got a pretty good front seven to work with. You have Hunter Sanders and Jacob Mercant in the trenches, but Marcus's kind of strength, if you kind of look at their team right now, I would have to say is at linebacker. You have Ethan Barr and Tyler Gainey, both back off all district seasons. Michael Kerrigan, Alex Fontaine, Hayden Self, so they're experienced and deep, and I think the linebacker is going to be a real strong suit for them.
The only other team in your neck of the woods we have not mentioned up to this point, and it stinks because, like, with what Flower Mound did last year, and they're just kind of them coming out of nowhere, it kind of buried what an awesome turnaround year it was for Lewisville.
It was. I mean,
Lewisville, which finished second in the district.
Second in the district, 1 loss to Flower Mound, a game that they led by 20 points in the third quarter. So they were, one huge Flower Mound comeback away from being the turnaround story and getting the district title in their own right. So talking to Coach Odell there, they're very excited going into this year. The experienced players they have coming back, are really relaying to the younger kids, about what it takes on the field and off the field and in the classroom, the expectations. And so things are really going nice for Lewisville there. Farmers have 2 coordinators to replace, so they're going to bring in Stu Johnson. He did some college coaching at Wabash and Purdue and was on staff with Coach Ogle back in the day when they were both at Coppell, so a lot of familiarity there. He's coming in to replace Antonio Wiley, who got the head job at Hershey.
All right.
Which also means the Farmers lose Antonio Wiley's son, Antonio Wiley, who was an all-district secondary player, along with Kevin Anderson. So for the Farmers, they have big holes to fill on the offensive line, and that secondary was, very real strong suit for them last year with that awesome defense.
Oh yeah,
some big shoes to fill there, but they should be strong in the front seven again. Talking to Coach Odell, Luke Halter is going to lead that linebacking unit, and then Christian Versey and Earl Barnes up in the front 4, 2 really good players there. So that's going to be the kind of the foundation for what should be a pretty strong Lewisville defense again.
Because, I guess now looking at with Wiley departing, that would mean then that they've lost 9 players that made the all-district team from that defense last year.
Yeah, so you got Versey and Barnes are the only 2 back, but they were also all-district players. Offensively, they're going to have a new coordinator. It's Greg Winder. He comes in from Stephenville. He was actually Stephenville's head coach. He's got some good pieces to work with too, especially in the backfield with Ben McAfee and Damian Martinez. And then, as I mentioned, Armani Winfield. He's another guy that got a Baylor offer before he ever stepped foot on the field at Lewisville. So expect a big breakout season from Winfield. He's gonna be a name. As I said, only a sophomore this upcoming year. Yeah. So you're gonna be hearing a lot about this guy moving forward. And Spencer Nielsen's back, but he's kind of the only key piece back on the offensive line. They had a transfer, Armani Winfield, at quarterback last year. I don't know why I said Winfield. So they have 3 guys they're looking at quarterback. So kind of a jumble there. Odell seems pretty confident in what he's seen from all 3, but not much separation or decisions to be made there at quarterback. So that's another thing to keep an eye on with Lewisville.
Should be a fun little battle royale for those 4 playoff spots between those 5 schools, which we would assume are still probably a cut above the Irving ISDs.
Yeah, Nimitz was
was feisty,
pretty pesky last year, but I would definitely say I would look at the LISD schools and Coppell as the 5 front runners for those 4 playoff spots, even with what some of those teams lost.
Awesome. And that'll do it for this episode of the Start Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Thursday to talk 2 more districts as part of our spring football roundup series. In the meantime, folks, you keep enjoying your week, and we will talk to you all later.